bring in Bill Connelly of ESPN. You can find him on Twitter at ESPN_Bill C, and go and check out all of his great content over at ESPN.com. And so, Bill, with A&M coming into Columbia here this weekend, with both teams coming off bye, like that really doesn't matter. That gets washed out before how this game could look. But look, with Mizzou getting Matt Zowers at least one extra week of preparation for his first start in his college career, what do you think that could do for him against this type of defense?
Well, I think the good news is the best possible way to move the ball on A&M is running the ball. They do give up some big run plays. That has been just kind of a random weakness of theirs. They defend the pass well, mainly because they rush the quarterback extremely well. And obviously for a true freshman quarterback first start, that's kind of the worst case scenario. So I do think you're going to see Missouri trying as hard as humanly possible to run the ball, throw quick, just stay on schedule. And really, I think staying on schedule is going to determine the entire outcome, because on when A&M has the ball, they have the most efficient offense in the country when they're on schedule, and when they're off schedule, they're extremely below average. And so it really is just, line play. And we know A&M won that battle last year pretty handily. And so we're going to see how Missouri can respond to all that. But I do think just staying on schedule is going to be the single biggest thing about this game.
Yeah, and certainly with how Mizzou's defense was able to wreak havoc on Diego Pavia in the game before, like the building points from that, did we learn anything new about what Mizzou's defense could be against Marcel Reed for this type of game? And again, you talk about wreaking havoc. That could be the main way that Mizzou finds its way through this one.
Yeah, Missouri's been really, really good these last couple of years at containing mobile quarterbacks, not go straight at them, whether it's Castellanos last year, whether it's Jalen Daniels earlier this year. I mean, Diego Pavia just seemed to be, we're going to dominate the offensive line, and he's not going to have anywhere to go, which is great when you can pull that off. It's going to be harder to pull that off against A&M, but they do seem to have a good mentality of, we're not, these super mobile guys, we're not going to run straight at them to where they can escape and make a big play on the run. We are going to just try to stay in front, playing, a good zone defense and contain him and make sure that he can't do something really big.
Bill, for Missouri's offense, is this the week that we finally see them kind of ride Ahmad Hardy no matter what's being thrown at him? Obviously, there have been reasons, I guess, in the various games where maybe we haven't seen quite as much of him, but it does seem like with the true freshman starting at quarterback that this might finally be, if it's ever going to happen, that week where you say we're gonna live and die with this in the run game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to clear a certain bar to be able to pull that off. Because if you get into a rut of just saying run on first, run on second, and then suddenly you have a bunch of third and eights with that pass rush coming at you. So yeah, I mean, obviously whatever they do, they have to do it well. But I mean, he's rested. I do think his issues in more recent weeks were more on the line than him. But at the same time, with the punishment he was dishing out in September, it wasn't going to be a surprise if he lost a little bit of an edge there. And how it would be a great time to get it back. It is going to be yards after contact are going to be humongous in this one, and he's certainly still one of the best at that.
Bill Connelly of ESPN here on the big show KTGR and the KTGR app. Let's get to what happened this past weekend, Bill, while Mizzou was off. But in the SEC, what was billed as an elimination game between Oklahoma and Tennessee, Sooners end up kind of taking control before halftime and then just kind of hanging on towards the end. What has Oklahoma kind of shown you over the last few weeks, even though there's been a little bit of up and down, but now there are some good resume pieces they can start building here, it seems.
Yeah, it was absolute smoke and mirrors in the first half. They had no right lead in that game at halftime. Tennessee, I don't remember what the yardage was. It was pretty significant in Tennessee's favor. Yeah, 255-99 at halftime for Tennessee, and they were losing. Problem was in the second half, OU was the better team as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I think what we've learned about OU, their offense is still extremely inconsistent. It's limited. They can't run the ball all that well, although they've done it a little better in recent weeks. They just beg John Mateer to make a big play. He sometimes does, often doesn't, but they have that defense. And even when it wasn't at its most efficient this past week, it forced turnovers. Joey Aguilar got a little impatient at times, forced a pass, and they picked it off each time he did it. And so it was a really nice, that's what a coach would call complementary play right there. Complementary football, where the offense carried it a little bit, defense carried a little bit, and it was good. I still think their upside is limited by that offense, but they can win games against good teams.
Bill, I thought I'd have the chance to ask you if the book is out on Diego Pavia, but with the way that Vanderbilt-Texas game ended, they made it pretty compelling. But what was your reaction to the way that Texas till the end really was able to limit that Vanderbilt offense. And now Texas in a spot where, certainly they're looking a lot more relevant in terms of the CFP conversation. Still need to get to that requisite win total, but your kind of reaction to the way that one played out.
Yeah, I think, first half, it did feel like a continuation of the Missouri game, just in the way that, Vanderbilt just couldn't control the line of scrimmage at all. And so whether, that just left Diego Pavia, I think he still passed all right in the first half, but they had no run game to speak of whatsoever. And the pass rush was coming at him. He ended up getting sacked 6 times. So I do think the biggest issue with Vandy is in the trenches. Their defensive line, I guess, held up relatively well against Missouri's. And honestly, Texas found the most advantage from throwing sideline to sideline, but Vanderbilt's offensive line just has not held up these last couple of weeks, and that'll bite you eventually.
Bill Connelly of ESPN here on the Big Show, KTGR and the KTGR app. What also seemed like a big upset at the time, and one where we get the latest head coach opening with Auburn losing to Kentucky 10-3. I don't think it's a perfect final score, I suppose, for a game like that. But just now with Auburn, all of a sudden, look, you could have maybe drawn up Hugh Freeze getting fired maybe a week or two earlier. But how do you view that now with Auburn and that opening, and certainly coming off of a loss like that?
Yeah, it felt like they really didn't want to. There was a little bit of hesitation there. Like, we really don't want to join this giant pool of teams with an opening unless we have to. And then you score 3 points on Kentucky, and the fans will officially disengage if you do not do something. So yeah, it is amazing. He got hired, I'm assuming, A, on the ability to beat Bama because he did it at Ole Miss, and B, on the fact that he's always had a good offense, and he just never had a good offense there. Never figured out the quarterback position at all. And this is what happens. You bring in a couple transfers, you bring in a bunch of star receiver recruits last year, still can't move the ball. You just waste a really, really, really good defense, and they didn't really have a choice in the matter, I guess.
So elsewhere in the SEC, Georgia survives in the cocktail party. Ole Miss pulls away from South Carolina. I want to know, outside the SEC, well, I guess I'll ask it this way. What the heck happened to Miami? Because they looked at the beginning of the season like they were going to be legit this year, and taking a loss to SMU on Saturday is not one that a legit team with those aspirations probably should have had.
I think, you could do the snarky answer and say, it's Miami, so of course this is going to happen. But I do, looking at this team in a vacuum, I think their offense got a little too much praise at the start of the year from what it was actually producing. From a numbers perspective, the Notre Dame game was solid, but it was 27 points. It was like when John Mateer was the Heisman favorite in September for a minute because they were scoring 24 points on Michigan. I was just confused as some of the reactions to some of these teams. But their offense has not been good enough these last few weeks. They had a burst against Florida State that allowed them to win that game. Beck just made too many mistakes. They make no big plays whatsoever, and that makes you have to dink and dunk all the way down the field. And eventually, Carson Beck throws a pick, and I think that was the extent of it. Their defense didn't hold up quite as well as I assumed it would against SMU. SMU's offense has been really disappointing this year. But yeah, when you can't make big plays and score easy points, you're just letting things linger. And then at the end of the game, SMU ties it. You got 25 seconds, a timeout, and a quarterback you paid $11 kajillion for, and you kneel out the game to go to overtime. You deserve to lose.
Yeah, it seemed that way for a team like Miami, but not the only top 10 team that got picked off in this weekend in the ACC, with Georgia Tech falling to NC State in what was a track meet of a game. And so just the landscape of that conference there, whether it could be one or two bids, Georgia Tech certainly still would appear to at least be close to the driving seat, if not on it, even with that loss. How do you kind of view that conference and what the hierarchy could look like and how that relates to the CFP?
Yeah, I was really enjoying. It's a really fun team to watch. Old man Haynes King, looking like a 60-year-old every time he tries to get up off the ground after getting tackled, and then throwing his body around all over again. Their defense was never good enough to go 12-0. It was never. They were never going to get through the rest of that schedule. They're 67th in my defensive SP Plus rankings, 18th in offense. They're going to have a chance here moving forward. But my numbers have loved Louisville all year, more than I have. And so right now, the way things are looking from an SP Plus perspective is Louisville and Virginia are up here, Georgia Tech's a smidge behind, but there's still a puncher's chance for Duke, a puncher's chance for Pitt. Technically, SMU is still in the race. So this is by far our messiest race. The Big 12 has actually established a hierarchy this year, which I don't approve of. But the ACC has picked up the mantle here in the terms of just sheer messiness.
Yeah, we're not used to that in the Big 12, but I did want to ask you about Utah, because when you're looking at the rankings, obviously that's not what decides a point spread, but they were the lower ranked team and favored by 10. They shot way past those expectations even against Cincinnati. What do you make of what that offense is doing? Whichever quarterback's out there is going to run, going to throw. What's your interpretation right now of the Utes? Yeah,
Utah right now is 10th in points per drive and 9th in points allowed per drive nationally. And obviously that Texas Tech game got away from them. They were falling behind schedule, couldn't catch up. Tech was just on a roll at that point. And that got away from them. Otherwise, they've only lost by 3 points at BYU, who hasn't lost to anybody. It's a really good team. And I almost wonder, I'm curious. They're one of the teams I'm really curious about when it comes to tomorrow night's playoff rankings. I can't decide where I think they're going to be, but if they're if they're in the teens, the low teens or something, they're in great shape to just absolutely destroy the three last teams on their schedule. Don't even worry about the Big 12 championship game. Let BYU and Tech fight that one out and just sneak into a spot, because they have they're winning scores. Again, they have lost twice. Their winning scores are 43-10, 63-9, 31-6, 48-14, 42-10, 53-7, and 45-14. When they get on top of you, you're done. And that's a really scary team if they manage to sneak in.
Yeah, Bill Connelly of ESPN here on the big show KTGR. And the rankings come out tomorrow, and it's the week before BYU and Texas Tech play each other. Now, the AP has them both in the top 10 at 8 and 9 this week. But generally speaking, how we could see them maybe slot into wherever they are in the CFP tomorrow. How does that look with, again, Texas Tech, just the one loss, but BYU, no losses yet, and we'll see what happens on Saturday between the two.
Yeah, I guess really the most realistic spot is they both land in that kind of 8 to 10 area. But I do think, if you look at the ESPN strength of record measure, I know they're supposed to be looking at strength of schedule metrics this year. Don't know what that's going to mean exactly. But BYU's 4th in strength of record, meaning the average top 25 team, the odds of them having the record BYU had after the schedule they face is not very good. It's an impressive 8-0 so far, especially with the win over Utah. So that might give them a little boost. And Texas Tech, obviously, their only loss came when their quarterback was injured. So otherwise, they have done basically the same scores that I just said for Utah have been the Texas Tech games this year. So I think those are two legit teams. I'm struggling. I figure it's going to be pretty SEC friendly, whatever we see. And I'm curious. I guess it's technically possible that they end up lower than 8th and 9th, but I'm going to guess it's somewhere right around there.
Yeah, but it seems the first one is always the one that becomes the informative one with how this committee thinks. And so, do you think we see all of a sudden the SEC, maybe they get a bit more love than the AP or the coaches did?
Yeah, I think the most interesting thing to watch is actually an SEC versus SEC team. If you've been reading Heather Dinich's pieces, kind of previewing the rankings these last couple of weeks, she's thinking Alabama's going to rank ahead of A&M, which, if that happens, is an immediate confirmation that the committee is looking at strength of schedule numbers as wrong as humanly possible. A&M is first in strength of record. Alabama's schedule has been harder, but A&M is unbeaten, didn't lose to 4-4 Florida State. A&M deserves to be ranked at worst 3rd. If you're going to punish somebody for a weaker strength of schedule, Alabama should be ahead of Ohio State or Indiana. And I don't think you can do that because they just look like the best teams in the country. But yeah, if Alabama is somehow actually ahead of A&M, then it's off the rails already, and we're doing everything wrong.
I mean, that would tell you too that, when we say we're not just looking at the AP and the numbers and stuff, and the fact of, who's ranked and who's this or that or the other coming in, all of it kind of bleeds in. It's going to be an interesting case study.
Yeah, it is. We get to this point of the year. It's like at the end of the basketball season where we're looking at, blind resumes and number of ranked wins, number of this, number of that. I also here's where I get to tell everybody else who always says, watch the games, nerd to me, watch the games because they tell you a lot. And things like Texas Tech being awesome is one thing. Things like Alabama not actually being all that dominant this year, like surviving a bunch of good games. Great. They haven't looked better than A&M this year, so they shouldn't rank ahead of them.
That's fair. And we shall see what the committee actually thinks about those two in relation to each other tomorrow when the first ranking gets revealed. Great to chat with Bill Connelly of ESPN. You can find him on Twitter at ESPN_Bill C. Check out the SP Plus rankings and, of course, all of his great content over at ESPN.com. Thanks, Bill, for coming on. Hope you're well. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good.